Today, I'm talking with Mr. Peter Hendrickson, author of Cracking the Code, The Fascinating Truth About Taxation in America. Pete, your latest email indicated a family of true Americans needs your help. What is going on, and how can we help?
Mr. Databrain, thank you for having this chat and giving me the opportunity to help you and other good Americans understand this situation.
Pete, your email subject said you need to know why, for your own sake and that of your children. This sounds dire. Please explain.
A brave whistleblower on a decades-old income tax scam by tax agencies and tax professionals who exploit widespread public ignorance of fine print in the law and have been fleecing the American people of trillions of dollars, languishes in prison after being railroaded in a corrupt trial by those eager to silence his voice and keep a lid on the liberating truth about the tax.
My God, man. This is truly a dire situation. Pete, how did this come about?
For almost 7 years the federal government has been engaged in an intense effort to suppress the liberating truth about the income tax uniquely revealed in Cracking the Code, The Fascinating Truth About Taxation in America, CTC. The political elite quickly recognized that, if it gets into enough hands, the information in the book is fatal to what has been a decades-long wallow in other people's money to which the political elite have grown very comfortably accustomed. Year 1, the liberating truth about the tax is revealed, and the first ever complete refund is issued. In December of 2002, I posted a summary of the research that would become CTC. On August 26 of 2003, the first edition of the book went on sale. On November 3, 2003, I became the first American in history to secure the return of all amounts withheld from my earnings and given over to the federal government in connection with the income tax, Social Security and Medicare contributions included. That was enough to bring on phase 1 of the assault, which had actually been being prepared since at least the day I made CTC available.
Pete, this struggle goes back to 2002? Almost a decade?
Yes, it does, in those famous words. Now, for the rest of the story. Year 2, the IRS launches a series of legal assaults, all of which fail. The suppression effort started with attempts by the IRS to characterize my website and my distribution of CTC as promotion of an abusive tax shelter and charge me accordingly. In the end, because nothing in CTC is false, these efforts failed, one after another, with the DOJ itself moving the courts in which these charges were being prosecuted to dismiss the actions. At one point in early 2005, the DOJ attorney involved had to ask me to be patient, as its IRS client was resisting the dismissals, but in the end, the DOJ prevailed, and the suits were dismissed, with me agreeing, at the government's request, to forgive it my costs.
Sounds like you put up a lot of red flags. How did things progress?
Year 3, increasing numbers of Americans begin recovering erroneously withheld or paid-in taxes. By now the beneficiaries of the ignorance tax were even more fearful of what CTC means to their good time gravy train of deception and exploitation. They shifted to a national PR or disinformation campaign. IRS, funded or friendly, web pages began posting smears aimed at me personally, and all disinformation about the contents of CTC. This 2005 project, during which the amount of money refunded to court-educated Americans by government treasurers cracked $1 million, peaked with the IRS crafting a carefully inaccurate description of the kind of improper filing meant to be mistaken for a CTC-educated return, and posting it as the #1 red flag item on its annual Dirty Dozen list issued on February 7, 2006. Guess what? That didn't work either.
Pete, you appear to have awakened a monster, hell-bent on devouring you, and the facts about the income tax.
Mr. Databrain, you are 100% correct. With unlimited funding, they will and can do almost anything they choose to against virtually anyone. Year 4, Plan C was a nationally announced lawsuit the United States v. Peter and Doreen Hendrickson. 4 days before tax day in April of 2006, the DOJ, now whipped into line by higher powers, and no longer trying to back the IRS down from its bad behavior, filed an action in the federal court for the Eastern District of Michigan. The suit claimed that the government had made a mistake in returning property withheld from me during 2002 and 2003, and now it wanted our property back. the government asked the court to coerce us into executing new tax returns for those years, on which we would be compelled to testify to the government's specifications, and declare our earnings to be income, because the government isn't willing to declare this to be true itself. But without such testimony, it's claimed that we owed it a tax, which was the justification for the suit in the first place. Can't be sustained. Sort of illegal lift yourself up by your own bootstraps ploy. Finally, in late February, the court simply denied our motions to dismiss the suit, and granted the government's motion for summary judgment, on the very same day. The judge simply declared us to owe the government taxes for 2002 and 2003, and ordered us to execute fictional 1040Xs for those years, in order to create a pretext for the first fiction. The DOJ and IRS issued press releases around the country, with headlines screaming that Hendrickson has been ruled against by the court. This, they figured, would finally scare into silence and compliance those insubordinately persevering corsairs. They were wrong, of course.
Pete, given their track record, they were not going to stop here, right?
Yes, Plan D was put into action. D is for desperate. Year 6, the IRS and DOJ announced an indictment against me, charging me with not believing what I revealed about the tax in my book on November 12, 2008. After a series of failed attempts over 4 years, an unsigned indictment was announced, charging me with 10 criminal counts of not believing what I know to be true about the law, and which the federal and by now, 33 state governments have been acknowledging ceaselessly for nearly 7 years now, continuing even as you read these words. No one else has ever been similarly charged in connection with a court-educated return, before or since. In October of 2009, I had a trial on these charges. Not a single witness for the prosecution testified that anything I said in my filings was wrong or false. Indeed, the prosecution was careful not to present a single witness even capable of rendering an opinion about such things. Even after all that, the prosecution felt obliged to persuade the court to keep the actual words of the statutes relevant to my filings from the eyes of the jury, which it did. The court even went so far as to deny a specific request from a juror to see them. Instead, the jurors were only given prosecution-crafted interpretations of the statutes, which incorporated undefined legal terms, and were designed to be misunderstood. The explanation given was that to give the jurors the actual words written by Congress might cause them to suspect that they don't mean what the prosecution wants the jury to think that they do. But all was well, as the judge reassured the jurors that if he, and therefore, they, got it wrong, it could all be fixed later, so don't sweat the verdict too much. They didn't sweat it too much. The jury promptly played that get out of jury duty before dinner time card. It went out for deliberations just after lunch, and came back with a guilty verdict on all counts well before dinner.
Pete, the best way I can think of to help you and your family is to have every American learn how and why the man who presented this knowledge to the world now sits behind bars. Why? For the crime of inconveniencing the state and letting his fellow citizens know what's been being done to them for the benefit of the politically connected or the ranks of the political hacks, all making a nice living for themselves, passing other people's money over to their special interests.
Mr. Data Brain, I have made the information from my first book available to everyone, and now it is totally free. My book, Cracking the Code, is now in PDF format, and can be downloaded from my website, losthorizons.com/ctc for free.pdf.
Pete, is there anything else we can do to help you and your true American family?
Yes, there are 3 things all Americans can do to help. First, pray for my family. Second, spread the truth, tell everyone you know. Third, if you can spare a few dollars, please make a donation to my wife and family, Mrs. Doreen Hendrickson, at 232 Oreo Road, Commerce, TWP, Michigan, 48382. May God bless you all, and help us preserve the dream, America.
Pete, thank you for helping us to understand what has happened to you and your family. In closing, I leave you with a quote Pete holds dear to his heart and soul: all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.